Dhamma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 17th of November 1961. Darkness to light. Only with effort, virya, and no wisdom in the practice, it becomes poor, no progress. Listening to the talk with both effort and wisdom, observing the Khandha, makes a difference. If you know your foolishness as foolish, then you're wise. Taking your foolishness as wise leads to becoming even more foolish, e.g., some politicians and economists. For these points, Sayadaw told the story of two pickpockets from the Dhammapada stories. One became a stream enterer after listening to the Buddha's teaching. The Buddha asked the monks about the differences between the wise and the fool, a discourse from Samyutta Nikaya. If you know your foolishness as foolish, you will realize the path and fruit knowledge. If not, you won't realize it. Coming to listen to a Dharma talk means you acknowledge your foolishness and come here to become wise. People who didn't come are considered more foolish. Right pointing arrow avijja, right pointing arrow sankhara, right pointing arrow vinanam. For vinanam, one must consider all 5 khandhas. Those who are not practicing vipassana are the fools, and those who practice are the wise. The duty of a teacher is to lead someone from darkness to light. We must make the vipassana task compulsory. Returning from darkness to darkness is like being an earthworm or a snail. You can't find light aside from practice. Many people came for the Dharma talk, and it was also very hot. Sayadaw encouraged them to be patient with the heat and crowded conditions, comparing them to the sufferings of hells. He also urged people to work hard in their practices. In the past, it was difficult to hear this kind of talk. It's quite true. Sayadaw was a gifted person who could deliver these kinds of talks with skill and penetration. Sayadaw, using the 5 khandhas, gave the instruction. He described how the 5 khandhas change differently with examples. If the khandhas are arising and not vanishing, they will pile up, becoming larger than Mount Meru. For example, the 5 khandhas of wanting to sleep, 5 khandhas of waking up, etc. You have come to this human world to conquer death. If you are truly happy, you will not encounter death for a moment. This is illustrated by the 5 aggregates, khandhas. It's overwhelming. In short, there are only mind and form. If reduced further, there would be only impermanence, anicca, arising and passing away. When you truly contemplate it, you will not find mind and form, but only anicca. Reducing it further yields only one dukkha sakka. Sayadaw asked him to contemplate whatever mind arises as anicca, dukkha sakka. With avijja, the darkness prevents discerning anicca. Now that you discern anicca, there is no more avijja. Aloko udapadi, attaining of light, even though coming from the darkness, now you have the light. If you continue with the contemplation, seeing more deaths and becoming disenchanted, then deaths come to an end. No more deaths arise. This is nibbana. You've come from the darkness and will never return to it again. This is the difference between the fools and the wise. One of the long talks, 1 hour 15 minutes. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 17th of November 1961. Dharma is the Creator. Becoming a Buddha is cutting off DA. Process. Connecting lives are death and birth, passing away, QT, and conception, patisandhi. The connection of kamma and result is DA. Process. If the DA process is cutting off, then it's nibbana. Not knowing the way of cutting off DA process and doubt that takes the cause to parents. This is only part of the truth, and a far cause. Christians and Muslims believe it was created by the eternal God. In that case, the reason for it is also incomplete. And then we can ask, who created the eternal God? According to the Hindus, these are created by the Maha Brahma. Doubt comes in because all these things are not completed. Ditthi comes in as, are these mind and form me? Not knowing the DA process, all die with wrong view and doubt. Therefore, they fall into apayas, i.e., hells, animals and hungry shades. This we can also see in the Discourse on Fearless, Book of the Fours, Anguttara Nikaya, and 4.184 Janasoni Suttam or Abhayasuttam. The Buddha answered Brahman Janasoni, in the fourth answer. This is not understanding of the cause and effect of the DA process. Therefore, the Dharma which closes the doors to apayas or stops apaya dharmas is the understanding of DA process which cut off ditthi and visakicha. Not knowing sakha and samsara is long, and has wrong view and doubt leads to apayas. With only an understanding of it one becomes kala sotapanna, closing the door to apayas for one life. There is no person nor being, God or gods, who makes these things happen. It happens by dharmas. These are made by dharmas. The Buddha said in the Sakkasamyutta, if someone thinks about a person or being, their processes of wandering is never ending, a lot of living and dying. If you think about the Khandha bodies, they are never ending or uncountable. Not knowing its beginning, and it cannot be found out the beginning. Sayadaw using the DA chart explained the process. In the past ignorance was leading the process and sankhara is satana, volition. You have a lot of perfection, parami, when hearing these kinds of dharma. This important point is quite true. Even most Buddhists don't know the teaching of dependent co-origination. In this talk Sayadaw only used sections 1 and 2 to explain the teaching. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 26th of November 1961. Ignorance to knowledge. If there is no cessation of avidya and no cessation of dukkha, it's true according to the 12 links of the DA process. In the practice and experience of Thai forest teachers, they also mention finding where ignorance, avidya, hides and destroying it in the final stage, the fourth stage or arahantship. In everyday life, samadaya arises from dukkha. CDA chart, section 2 right pointing arrow section 3, every day, the circle of DA arises again and again. It was like a cow circling an oil-producing circular grindstone. What does it mean that the samsara is very long? Is it in a straight line or running in a circle? It's running in circles. Dukkha is wood, fuel, and samadaya is fire. Fire and fuel are turning circular. If you apply a number to them, it will also never end. It starts from avidya to the end, and then from the end to the beginning, i.e., anuloma patiloma. Aging, sickness, and death are ignorance, avidya. This is the worst situation of a person with no cessation of ignorance. In the era of short human lifespans, even people are still making themselves become stupid and foolish, instead of wise, i.e., following the Dharma practice. Sayadaw compared the human lifespan with the Tavatimsa heaven lifespan. 100 human years equal 1 day of Tavatimsa. On one day, one of Sakka's wives passed away from there and was born in the human world. She made merits and prayers to be born again as Sakka's wife. When she was born there, Sakka and devatas were still playing in the garden. Humans are doing all kinds of unwholesome dharmas. They are playing stupid shows even among the sufferings. No limits in stupidity. If we look at the human world today and contemplate with the DA process, we can discern many kinds of stupidity and foolishness about humans. It's quite a mess and chaotic. You have to make this determination. Let me starve and die. I have to finish my vipassana task. You have to make great effort, as this is to be your last life. Starving to death is not so important. Only fearful of falling into hell or apayas. Which one do you prefer, after starving to death and not falling into hell or apayas, or dying with a full stomach and falling into hell? This question should be asked to politicians, economists, and billionaires. The Buddha himself said that, if I tell you about the sufferings of apaya dukkha, it'll never end. Don't take the Buddha's warning superficially. This is very great and extensive suffering, dukkhas. Let's do the practice. I'll extract the Pali Dharma from the Samyutta Nikaya. A monk asked the Buddha, how can a person know, contemplate, and see with the cessation of ignorance and becoming knowledgeable? Because of past ignorance, you have to pay your kamich debt with the khandha. It's important that from this khandha, do not let ignorance arise, i.e., from sek. 2. Does not arise sek. 3. See the DA chart. You have to contemplate the anicca of aramana and vara, sense object and sense base, contemplate the anicca of minds. And you'll see anicca dukkha sakka. Sayadaw gave instruction on the contemplation of mind, which was Sayadaw's favorite. In this way, from sek. 2, sek. 3 did not arise. Avidya is not born from the khandha by discerning anicca dukkha sakka. Without it, tanha, upadana, and kama do not arise. If you contemplate, all the arising mind and ignorance ceases. It's doing the work of knowledge. Vajja is magga, knowledge. If you discern anicca and see dukkha, also, contemplate the anicca of feelings, here taught as Vedana. Sek. 3 does not arise and does not connect to sek. 4, i.e., birth, jati. There is no birth. This is nibbana. At first, you contemplate it with the knowledge from my teaching. When you see it directly, ignorance will cease. Ignorance is born from sek. 2, and if doing vipassana, sek. 3 does not arise. See the 12 links of DA. In this way, the play of life ended in sek. 2. The play of life will now end. Section 2 is dukkha sakka, and when contemplating it, one knows one's own dukkha. Not knowing about the attainment of dukkha, it becomes ignorance. Knowing the arising dukkha, it becomes vijja. You're discerning anicca dukkha, which becomes the disciple who follows the Buddha's exhortation, ovada. You're free from doubt and have the quality of bravery, and you do not believe what others have said. You become a sasana person, a true Buddhist or sotapanna. Here, the important point is that not becoming a sotapanna is an outsider. In the teaching given to the Sakkaka wanderer, it's important to see it by oneself. It doesn't need perfection, paramita. Take note of it carefully and contemplate anicca to not let ignorance arise. The main differences between Buddhism and other faiths are direct seeing or understanding, believing in what others have said, or ignorance. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 26th of November 1961. A slave with 6 masters. You all are serving the desires of the 6 senses of the door. The herder is only one, and the animals to herd are 6. They make you overtired. The herder is always following behind the strongest, pulling in one's direction. It's really not easy to herd the 6 animals whose natures and preferences are quite different, but we're happy like a slave. Even not safe and sound at death, because you're following its desire. We're always busy with these 6 senses of the door. Dying with worry, and all go to apayas. Because people die with lobha, dosa, and moha dharmas. If people are not dharma practitioners, most of them will die with these states of mind. They have to die with worry and confusion. Do you see your difficult death? Because of these 6 animals, living beings are not in right living and dying. Do you attain a good human life? It does not include your own desire and nature. Take other natures as my nature and me. You don't have free time. This extraordinary talk shows the extensiveness of Khandha Sankhara Dharma and also the greatness of Dukkha Dharmas. If you can't control these 6 senses of the door, it can't be good living and dying. If you die with discontent, domanassa, you have to go to upayas. Because you can't overcome dukkha vedana and worry. This Dharma talks about the 6 kinds of DA. Processes, i.e., in our daily life experiences, it's about all Dharmas. You have to listen with big ears, nana ears. If not, you don't know what I am talking about. It was looking very much like a slave very busy doing things for his 6 masters. Here are not included other extra things and matters yet, only talking about the primal things. I am talking about only the existence of the 6 doors which fulfill your prayers, with merits. It's a difficult living and dying, and never free from business. You have the 6 Tanna masters and it's not possible that you don't serve them. How do you deal with them? What would you say about aging and illnesses before arriving at the stage of aging? I.e., people who are busy and have a lot of stress. You have satisfaction with what Tanna is asking, but can't opt for the perfection, parami. Even you can't bear a mosquito bite. Do you have any merit with you? Even if you have it, they must be the merits asked by Tanna, i.e., Ditti Tanna merits. The merits of what you have done following the desire of the 6 animals. For these merits, you're asking humans and devatas to say sadhu. Well done in Pali. I am talking like this because it's not the kind of merit free from the round of existence. It doesn't mean you shouldn't make merits. It's a bit better if each sense door pulls you in turn. If they pull you all together, it will be a disaster, e.g., using a smartphone while driving the car or crossing a highway, etc. At last, according to the Buddha, you can't attain Nibbana until you are able to control the 6 animals. It becomes clear why you don't have time. You don't have a permanent place and a permanence of not dying, i.e., Nibbana. Every life is this way. Don't ask me, what happened to me in past life? The answer will be, bad living and bad dying. You have to think about it carefully. You're always becoming a slave. You're the slave of the 6 doors of Tanna. Only by overcoming these 6 animals will you have a good living and good dying. Note, this talk is based on the Salayatana Samyutta, the simile of the 6 animals, a snake, a crocodile, a bird, a dog, a jackal, and a monkey, which represent the 6 sense faculties of eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, and mind, doors, respectively. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 27th of November 1961. How to ask questions. I have often said that if one does not understand DA, one will have the wrong view and doubt. You have to remember this point until attaining the path and fruit knowledges, until becoming a stream enterer. Only after understanding it can ditti be purified. After this, after the contemplation of impermanence, suffering, and non-self, anicca, dukkha, and anatta, one can testify to the path knowledge. With the understanding of DA, will understand the process of the Khandha and its arising causes. We have to contemplate this Khandha that if you have ditti and visakicha becoming fruitless. DA is one's Khandha arising cause and its process. The arising cause and its process are different. The arising cause is knowing the causes of Dharma which causes the present Khandha to arise. Is it the arising process for man or woman? No, it isn't. If knowing Vinanam right pointing arrow, feeling, Vedana, section 2, or the 5 Khandhas is knowing the arising process. I.e., knowing the dharmas of cause and effect. If you do not know these things before and follow the contemplation, doubt and wrong view will appear in the contemplation. These dharmas are forbidding path and fruit knowledges. They forbid the first path. If not knowing the cause, dharma has doubt. If not knowing the result, dharma has wrong view. If you are clear about these things, then you have to make the decision that this life of dukkha will be extinguished. Sayadaw talked about the questions and answers between Sariputta and Mahakassapa. If you ask, if a being dies and after that, does it become again? This is Sasata Ditti. No living being dies and no living being is born, so there is no need to answer this question. There is no being in the arising cause and also in the arising of result. After death, consciousness and only sek. Two arise, i.e., the five khandhas. There is nothing to answer this question, means you appreciate the DA. After the mind and form, khandhas, of the past ceased, the present mind and form arise. After the present of mind and form cease, the future mind and form will arise. You have the knowledge of not answering the question which shouldn't be answered. By understanding the DA process, you have knowledge of both, discerning the mind, and discerning the form, and its cause and effect. You get the basic knowledge of the path knowledge, and it's very valuable. If asking with, does a being not become after death? This is also not good to answer, and asking with Akeda Ditti. With the understanding of DA process and it's purified from both Sasata and Akeda. Contemplate on the DA process, it is severed and becomes a Buddha, i.e., a Bodhisattva. The third question is, after death does a being both exist and does not exist? There is birth consciousness arising only after the dead consciousness ceases. It exists only as each mind arises and passes away one by one. There is no being. For an arahant after the Qt Chitta, dead mind, and Nibbana arises. So after the death of an arahant, it does not mean that nothing exists. The fourth question is, after death does a being neither exist nor does not exist? Why not answer all these questions? These are not beneficial for oneself and others, not leading to knowledge of disenchantment, nibbida nana, not free from lust, raga, nor extinguishing of kilesas and not arriving at nibbana. The Buddha and all noble beings will not answer them. Then how to ask beneficial questions? What is dukkha sakka, samuddaya sakka, nirodha sakka, and magga sakka? Asking these questions is beneficial. Recognizing the dukkha sakka, one gets tired of it, one turns away from desires, extinguishes kilesas, and reaches nibbana. In the past life, only samuddaya sakkas were arising. See the 12 links of DA chart. It had been lived with avidya, sankara, tanha, upadana, and kama, and only tried to do samuddaya sakka. Only bad things were arising. Then you know yourself as I am too stupid and foolish. If these things do not arise, is it good? Then don't you do vipassana. In this way path and fruition knowledge will arise. Dukkha will end. It has benefits by asking these kinds of questions. Nirodha sakka is by contemplating the khandha and it becomes disappeared, extinction or cessation. Extinction of dukkha is nirodha sakka. If dukkha vanishes, it's nibbana. In whole life, or the whole samsara, never have been freed from dukkha and now don't you know the separation from it. Magga sakka only arises with practice. There is only the existence of truth, sakkas, that only asking about the matters of truth becomes right. This important point is quite true if we combine all matters related to all living beings. Only the four noble truths exist. All are proliferation of beings. With no practice, beings are living with two unwholesome truths, dukkha and samadaya, and with practice, living with two wholesome truths, nirodha and magga. True Buddhists are very rare indeed. Most of them are eternalists, sasatavadi, or believe in eternalism. This point is also quite important for contemplation. Even among Theravada Buddhists, many or the majority are sasatavadas, even though the Pali Nikaya is still existing. It was even worse to not follow the traditions of Nikayas later on. There are many superstitions and reliance on outside powers and becoming closer to other faiths. Only let it be in speech, i.e., wrong view. Don't think or take it as real. It's not easy to pull out a few people from the majority. The people, or beings, that the Buddha could help were but a few grains of dust on his fingernail, while the beings he left behind were as numerous as the dust on the entire earth. Even uncountable Buddhas were arising in the past as numerous as sand grains in the Ganges River. It's extremely difficult for a living being to end dukkha. This Dharma is very rare and difficult to have the opportunity to hear. Are you still not clear? There are more people drifting in the ocean of samsara with raga and dosa. It's very rare indeed. Very few of them embark on the bank. Understanding comes from letters and da. Chart is not real understanding. Real understanding comes from one's own khandha da. Process, i.e., direct experience with practice. It's important to see it in the khandha in accordance with the circular chart. Understanding comes from seeing with contemplation. For example, feeling arises from the khandha, and when you contemplate it, it is not there anymore. Vedana pakayatana does not arise equals feeling conditions craving does not arise. Da. Circular chart is, for example, of the real process. The Da. Circle diagram is an example of a real process. Even if you understand the diagram, you still need to know your own aggregates, khandha, or observe them. With the chart, you have to compare your khandha experiences with it. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 27th of November 1961. Khandha Hospital. This talk is based on the simile of the 6 animals discourse and talk about seclusion, viveka. It is like a man covered with sores and wounds entering a forest of thorns and reeds. The eye, ear, mind anywhere in the body has wounds and sores, and form, sound, mind objects are thorns. Therefore, kilesa wounds are festering all the time. The injured patient's desire to enter the thorn bush will make the situation worse. Lobha, dosa, and moha are festering at the eye, ear, etc. People who don't want to stay in forests and mountains can't live there either. They only desire to stay in cities. That's why they want to be pricked. They are satisfied to have wounds and don't want to be free from them, i.e., not appreciating body seclusion, kaya viveka. The reason for short life is kilesa's thorns. It makes sense, and Sayadaw is right. Kilesas are unwholesome negative mental states or unwholesome energy which affect the physical world. The cause of kama is very few, if not become a kamavadi ditthi, i.e., the view that kama determines everything. It's very similar to God, the Creator. The Buddha not only mentioned kama but also talked about many other causes. For example, suicides, i.e., prick with mind or mental thorns. If you blame everything only on the past kama, it's kamavadi ditthi. Many Buddhists have this wrong view. Whatever may be, if there are inconveniences and you're blaming it on kama. With anger and doing things blindly is pricking with thorns in the mind. Staying calm is a good thing. It's becoming festering wounds by entering thorny bushes or places. Dying with fright is pricking with form-object thorns, e.g., haunted by violent ghosts. If you die with poison, it is pricking with the taste of thorns, etc. You go to the thorny bush and wood and also don't want to have wounds. This is never possible. Even the Buddha can't help. If you stay with samatha and vipassana, you will not be pricked by thorns. You don't want to die as a lone mouse, but among relatives. Why is that? Want to go to the apayas. It means like this. Die with upadana dharmas. Could it become upadana or not by dying among the affectionate people? The Buddha's preference and our preferences are back to back, i.e., opposite. The Buddha is for nibbana and you're headed to apayas. Therefore, it becomes our permanent homes. Whichever of the 6 objects is pricking you will become wounds and sores. In the Dhammapada verse, a person with no wounds, even though handling the poison, nothing is happening to him. If he has wounds, he will die. After becoming a sotapanna by entering the thorny troublesome, kilesa, forest, you will no longer be pricked by thorns. In the discourse of the simile of the 6 animals, the Buddha mentioned these thorns and continued to talk about the 6 animals. Only in physical and mental seclusion can one become safe. Upadhi viveka only comes by attaining the magga, path knowledge, seclusion from acquisitions. Staying away from the sense objects is body seclusion. With the calm mind contemplating anicca is mind seclusion, not letting the mind go towards sense objects. If you have wounds on the hand and go to touch the poison, you will die. Therefore, I have to warn you to not play around with them. It's not easy to talk about these kinds of dharma. The nature of these dharmas is not the same as the preferences of beings. The preferences or desires of beings are to be pricked with thorns, not small ones, the biggest and most poisonous ones, especially politicians and economists. Dharma is free from dangers, i.e., nibbana. No other thing is really free. What the Buddha taught was right. You have to make the decision that all your preferences are wrong. If becoming citta viveka, contemplate with insight. The 6 animals are from samyata and viveka is from the anguttara. If it's becoming upadhi viveka you'll never be pricked by thorns. Kaya viveka right pointing arrow, citta viveka right pointing arrow, vipassana right pointing arrow, upadhi viveka, khandhas vanish, magga. Khandha is the place where wounds and sores grow out. There is no khandha in upadhi viveka. Upadhi viveka is equivalent to nibbana. If it disappears for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, etc., there is no wound. Without the body there is no place for pricking. Therefore, in free times Aryas prefer to stay in fruitions, phala. Only if you know these things, you prefer nibbana. Here, the fact that khandha is rogato, disease, becomes clear. This khandha was like a hospital with patients, with many kinds of disease. Cessation of this khandha is nibbana. Only you know that you have wounds and want to be freed from it. Now, you all know that you all have wounds. With practice and not wanting to stay with the big wounds, the path knowledge arises. Khandha is oppressive with no piti, pilanata and with 96 kinds of disease. It'll oppress you with the sense objects of wounds. You have been oppressed with it because the khandha exists. So don't include kamas in it. Then, upasakas and upasikas, what is the most important thing for you? With no khandha existing, Venerable Sir, you'll see the khandha grows out with wounds in blips, i.e., discern anicca. Continue with the contemplation and become disenchanted with it. With this, khandha exists and nibbana is covered up. Nana, knowledge, is covered up with defilements, kilesa. And then the khandha, i.e., dukkha sakka, is covered up by Nibbana. If you know thoroughly that Khandha has wounds and you don't want them, then Nana does not turn towards Upadana. Instead, it turns towards no Upadana Nibbana. Here Upadana is Khandha's. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 28th of November 1961. Useless and disgusting Khandha. The Buddha gave talks by request and according to the situations that arose. Now, this talk was freed from these two matters and arose from his great compassion and delivered the Dharma on Nibbana and the way to it. Raga, lust, dosa, hatred, and moha, delusion, end in Nibbana. These unwholesomenesses are craving and clinging, aversion to things and people, and not knowing or ignorance. Whenever contact with a sensual object becomes greedy and lustful, it is raga. When it becomes unpleasant, it is dosa. And when ignorance of impermanence, suffering, non-self, anatta, and the truth of suffering prevails, it is moha. Except for Nibbana, all is dukkha sakha. If you can end not knowing, that is Nibbana. The cause of arriving at Nibbana is the right view. It's the way to Nibbana if you rightly see anicca, dukkha, anatta, and dukkha sakha. Dependent co-origination teaching, dasana, has two kinds. If causes and effects are continuing, there is dukkha arising. And if the causes and effects are cut off, there is the cessation of dukkha or Nibbana. These two are Khandha arising and Khandha cessation. The DA connection is to dukkha, and the cutting of it is to Nibbana. Therefore, not understanding the DA process means not understanding the cause of dukkha and Nibbana. Are you clear about it? If you don't use DA as a manual, you can't understand it. Study and look at the DA chart carefully, and it'll become clear to you. With the cause of Sek 1, Samadaya Sakha, and Sek. 2, Dukkha Sakha arises. Sayadaw explained Sek 1 and 2 in detail. We can also contemplate it ourselves. Because of our past foolishness and stupidity, we now have the result of foolishness. Because of dukkha, Samadaya gets the result of dukkha. Do you get dukkha with good karma? Or because of your past foolishness? You can't take off aging, sickness, and death. It appears to us, we get the useless thing. In any life, if you don't know it as dukkha sakha, ignorance will arise again. Living happily with your wife and children means being happy wherever you are. Being happy with the things you have as good is tanha. And not wanting to separate from your wife and children is clinging, upadana, etc. Related to kama. From dukkha, Sek. 2, and samadaya, Sek. 3, arises again. If you don't do the task of insight, it is like you let samadaya grow in its own way. Section 3 is the present cause, but can also be said as the future cause. It allows future Khandha to arise. Section 3 will connect with Section 4. If you don't want it to connect, don't let Sek. 3 arise from Sek. 2. If Sek. 3 arises, it's the arising of the DA process, and if it's not, then the cessation of the DA process. It's important, so take note of it carefully. If we reconnect with the above mentioned, from Sek. 2 not arising, Sek. 3 is Nibbana. With the cessation of Sek. 3 and Sek. 4, which are the cessation of dukkha and samadaya, so it's Nibbana. Why don't you attain Nibbana? Because from Sek. 2, Sek. 3 arises and you can't get it. Your own fault becomes clear to you. In this way, you know about yourself and also can speak about others. Nibbana is the cessation of Sek. 3 samadaya and Sek. 4 dukkha. Some think Nibbana is like a place, i.e., supreme heaven. Some later Buddhists postulated special supreme heavens and Buddha lands for Atta Nibbana for popular Buddhism. Venerable Sir, could I attain Nibbana in this life? If you ask some Sayadaw, they will answer you without solid answers. You'll know it by yourself. If you ask others about your own knowledge, it becomes senseless. This is Ditta Dhammo, seeing or discerning by oneself and not by others' sayings, one of Sotapanna's qualities. This is also Sanditthiko, to experience it here and now. Do you know about yourself? Even someone who has supernormal power, Avana, can't say it. Tanna ends in Nibbana, Khandha ends in Nibbana. I.e., Sec.3 and Sec.4 end. The Khandha DA process is talking to you. Don't think blindly about whether others attain Nibbana or not. None of them are true. All these are only thoughts, proliferation, and not about actual knowing. Here, Sayadawji's talk becomes humorous. You have to make decisions with this as it's a Raja day or a Payasada day, i.e., about whether it's a lucky day or an unlucky day. Note, the Burmese calendar follows the Buddhist tradition. Each day is described as a Raja day, good day, or a Payasada day, bad day. All these descriptions are made by astrologers. This tradition may have come from Indian astrology. Hence, here, Mogok Sayadaw's interpretation on good luck and bad luck from the Dharma view. It is indeed true, without the end of Khandha Dukkha, all beings will always be in the day of bad luck, the day of Payasada. Dharma Talks by Mogok Sayadaw. The 29th of November 1961. Lunatics of the World. I'll talk about the significance of wise attention and unwise attention, i.e., yoniso and ioniso. With unwise attention, unwholesome dharmas arise and increase the unwholesome ones which already exist. In accordance with parental tradition, people are taught with unwise attention. Therefore, non-arising unwholesome dharmas arise and increase those which already exist. Whenever you observe this khandha, it arises and vanishes. This dukkha khandha is oppressed by aging and sickness. It's unable to stop that non-self khandha. Excrement, urine, etc., come out from it. That is a loathsome khandha. In everyday life, people greet and receive each other with anicca as nicca, dukkha as sukha, anatta as atta, and asubha as subha, i.e., inconstant as constant, suffering as happiness, non-self as self, and loathsome as beautiful. These are unwise attentions. In the world, inversions, vipallasa, are overwhelming people. So many unwholesome dharmas arise in the world. With unwise attention, we're far from the dukkha ending of nibbana, and all will fall into apayas which become certain. Is there anything in the world more frightening than unwise attention? The unwise attentions come from inversions, vipallasas, of perception, mind or knowing, and view, i.e., sana, citta, and ditthi, vipallasas. Therefore, the world of the Futhayano Umataka, worldly lunatics are opposite to the Buddha. The Buddha was likely to appear in the world of the lunatics. All are Tanna lunatics, Mana lunatics, and Ditthi lunatics, Loka dharmas and Buddha dharmas are opposite. All the deaths of people are those of lunatic corpses. No one dies by curing their craziness. Note, I translate the Burmese word, Ayu as lunatic instead of abnormal or crazy. In the English dictionary, lunatic, as a noun, describes someone as a lunatic, meaning that they behave in a dangerous, stupid, or annoying way. Lunacy, as an adjective, lunatic behavior is foolish and likely to be dangerous. Today, human defilements, lunacy, have no limits and are quite extreme. Sayadawji's talk itself is humorous and has a heavy tone. Observing today's humans, lunatics, seems more suitable to describe current human situations, matters, and problems. If I were to list a few, 9/11, terrorism, wars in many parts of the world, competitions in trade wars and arms races, climate changes, all sorts of pollution both internal and external, etc. There are more people heading to apayas, and there is no need to disbelieve it. The Buddha also spoke about it. These dharmas will always resist inside knowledge. If you do not gain vipassana gnana, you can't attain nibbana. The culprits of raga lunacy and ditthi lunacy are unwise attention. Only through the purification of them can one arrive at nibbana. If you become a stream enterer, the inversion of view disappears. There are 12 factors in Vipallasa dharmas, and I need to spend some time explaining them. We lack the sense restraints, indriya samvara sila, that prevent taking sense objects as good-looking, graceful, blessings, etc., and ionisto masks anicca, dukkha, and anatta from leading to nibbana. If you practice vipassana, craziness becomes more manageable. Craziness will not disappear if you only perform merits. Opening parenthesis. Most people do merits with craving and clinging, resulting in him gaining power and wealth and becoming superglues, leading to evils. See all the international crises. There are 4 cups of medicine to cure lunacy and craziness, abnormality, the 4 kinds of medicine, anicca, dukkha, anatta, and asubha. If people don't take them, their raga lunacy and ditthi lunacy will not heal, and may even worsen, as seen with some naked men on the streets in the West. Actually, there are 3 kinds of lunacy, raga, ditthi, and moha. The Buddha appears to give us 3 cups of medicine, anicca, dukkha, and anatta. Therefore, he is called Sattadeva Manusanam, teacher of gods and humans, or the great doctor to humans or living beings. He gives us the medicines to expel the poisons of nicca, sukha, and atta. Understanding the Buddha's Dharma is very difficult, especially since it's not easy to have a desire or lend an ear to listening to the Dharmas. You're all changing your days or putting off drinking or taking medication. If I am urging you for the practice and your response is, "Let me continue my craziness," or "I'll do it later," etc., you all think that fire and gold, excrement and rice are the same, or not much different, as craziness. This is Lokya lunacy, i.e., influenced by paraloka, black magic, etc. This is Sabhava lunacy. Craziness comes from many world systems such as raga lunacy, dosa lunacy, and moha lunacy. In the whole of samsara, there is not a good one. The Buddha used many ways to prescribe the medicines, e.g., he used different methods to cure alavaka yaka and janapada kalyani. Even people become crazy at puja times. At prayer times, most Buddhists are praying for sugati, good destinations after death. This is praying for dukkha sakha. Praying with raga is raga lunatic. Not knowing dukkha sakha is moha lunatic. Thinking, if I do it I must receive it, is ditthi lunatic. Therefore, their craziness will never end or be cured. They stimulate the inversions in front of the Buddha. You can't even find the beginning time of when beings started becoming crazy. Their lifespan of lunacy is quite long, even you can't find its starting point. With unwise attention, the 12 inversions come in. Sayadaw gave some examples in daily life of how inversions of perception, knowing, and viewing arise continuously. With him, craziness is not cured and even increases every day. There is nothing more valuable than 3 cups of medicine which cure craziness. The Buddha himself offered his bones, flesh, and blood for 4 great incalculable eons, asankhya kappas, hundreds of thousands of eons, to develop the perfections, parameters, with difficulties, and discovered these 3 cups of medicine. Now, you all get it easily. Should you drink it or not? The beginning of craziness arises from unwise attention. The Buddha instructs that from seeing, hearing, etc., don't continue forwards. If you do, it becomes crazy. Just stop at seeing, hearing, etc. Another way is contemplating the anicca of seeing, hearing, etc. Except for the 3 cups of vipassana medicine, there is no other refuge, God or outside powers. Even the Buddha himself appeared with these 3 cups of medicine. If you discern anicca, you are vomiting the poisons. Don't take it as your practice not developing. If you discern little and vomit little, if you want to vomit a lot, then you have to drink it a lot more, practice a lot. You are vomiting the dharmas which make you crazy. The Buddha's medicines always cure. If you really take it, it really cures. He himself took it and cured it, then shared it with living beings. He did not give it just having heard from others. If you take it, it not only reduces the problem but with more, it'll be cured. Don't look for these medicines in other places, faiths, or you'll miss it. I am only worried that you don't recognize yourself as in craziness. Then you'll not look for the medicine. Only by taking the medicine will you know yourself as crazy. Who built the 4 upayas? Unwise attention built them. In this case, do you build it yourself or are you just unlucky? If you make a mistake, you build a home there. It's quite a terrible thing. You're using the tools and machines of 12 inversions to build the home there. You will go and live there, where it was built by you. Where do you build hell? From the human world, and it makes sense. This point is very interesting. While we are still alive, we have created various karmas. These things are already there. During the dying moment, one of the results makes the decision for us. Nandya Upasaka built the sala in the human world, and celestial mansions appeared there even before he died. Sayadaw told his story in the Dhammapada. In Ajahn Mun's biography, it mentions an old nun who had attachment to her niece even before her death. The niece had a pregnancy from her, the nun. The old nun was a good meditator, and during a sitting, she saw a white thread coming from her heart and going into her niece's womb. She mentioned this to Ajahn Mun, who asked her to cut off the thread the next time in meditation, with the samadhi power. She did it the next time, and the pregnancy was aborted. Another story also in the Dhammapada. A pet crane swallowed the ruby gem belonging to the king. The pet owner, the gem polisher, was very angry and killed the crane on the spot. The pet dies and is conceived in the wife's womb because they had a strong karmic link and the crane was attached to her. It seems to me that one of the factors of ovum and sperm combined first, even before the crane's death, as in the old nun's story. Is it not clear it was built from the human world? I.e., by Nandya. After you were born, your parents taught you the inversions dharmas. You all have to go there where you built them. Don't be in low spirits, but also don't pretend nothing happens to you. You still have time. There is medicine, and teachers still exist. Don't waste time. Unwise attention was like a manager, and the 12 inversions were builders. As path knowledge arises, the 8 great hells and 120 small hells vanish.